This happened just a few nights ago. I'm Liam, a 32-year-old paramedic, working overnight shifts at the old hospital downtown. I thought I was used to the sounds of the place, the beeping machines and distant voices. But that night was different. The building felt like it was holding its breath. I was in the emergency ward, sorting supplies when it began. At first, I thought it was the radio, but I quickly dismissed that. It sounded like whispers. I couldn't make out the words, but the voice pulled at me. It felt familiar. I thought maybe it was my tired brain playing tricks. I had lost my father a few months back, so maybe I was just missing him. But the whispers didn't stop. As I switched off the lights in the supply closet, they grew louder. A chill ran down my spine, and my heart raced. I thought I heard my name, maybe? I shook my head. I tried to focus on my work, but I felt like I wasn't alone. The next night was worse. I was making my rounds when I heard the whispers again, clearer this time. They seemed to come from the supply closet. I paused, listening closely. Liam, the voice called, tentative yet familiar. A knot formed in my stomach. It sounded like my father. I hesitated, torn between hope and fear. I crept closer to the closet. I opened the door slowly, and I found nothing, just shelves filled with supplies. I backed away, feeling a strange urge to look deeper but also dread. Later, I noticed strange behavior from the staff. Nurse Clara was whispering with a patient in a way that felt off. They didn't seem right, and I thought maybe I was being paranoid. Then I learned that a patient had vanished. They came in late, ranting about voices. I felt a chill wash over me. Was it connected to those whispers? Maybe it was all tied together. I couldn't ignore the pattern. Another patient disappeared too, claiming to hear things. Then the voice came back. Liam. It sounded urgent this time. I turned around. No one was there. I felt cold and confused. The whispers got louder, surrounding me. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Were the whispers my grief or something darker in the hospital? I still hear those whispers in my dreams. They seem to call me. I can't shake the feeling that I need to find out what happened. I'm scared, but I also need answers. What truly happened in that hospital last night? As I sit here recalling it, I can still hear the echoes in the quiet. They follow me. I can't escape the whispers, and I think I need to go back. There is something there waiting for me, and I can't ignore it any longer. What am I going to find? I wish I knew. The following night, I felt a different kind of anxiety in my chest. I knew I had to return to the hospital. The whispers wouldn't let me go, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to confront whatever it was that called out to me. I went in early, hoping to catch a moment of peace before my shift began. As I walked through the empty corridors, the fluorescent lights flickered, casting shadows that danced along the walls. I felt like those whispers were waiting for me, lurking in every corner. A part of me wished I could turn back, but curiosity pushed me forward. I had to know if they were real or just some figment of my imagination. I made my way to the supply closet first, feeling like I was heading into battle. The door stood slightly ajar, as if inviting me in. I hesitated at the threshold, and a mix of fear and anticipation surged through me. Liam, the voice whispered again, more insistent now. I clenched my fists and stepped inside. This time, I didn't just look at the shelves. I rummaged through the supplies, searching for something, anything that could explain the voices. I found nothing out of the ordinary. Just bandages and syringes. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a small box tucked far back on a shelf, almost hidden. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside lay an old, dusty tape recorder. My heart thudded as I picked it up, and I pressed the play button with trembling fingers. At first, there was only static. Then, muffled voices seeped through, and I felt chills run down my spine. I strained to listen, and I began to catch a few words. "Help, Liam here, can't." The message sent a jolt through me. It felt urgent, filled with pain and desperation. Who were they? My hands trembled as I turned off the recorder. I had to know more. Just then, Nurse Clara walked in. She froze when she saw me with the tape recorder. Her eyes widened, and there was a flicker of concern that didn't sit well with me. "What do you have there?" she asked, her tone too even. I hesitated. "I found this in the closet." "What happened to the missing patients, Clara? Did they hear the whispers too?" Her expression changed in an instant. It was as if a mask slipped. "You shouldn't be digging into things you don't understand, Liam," she warned, her voice low and urgent. Suddenly, I felt trapped. The air in the room thickened, and I could see a flicker of fear cross her face. It was then that the whispers grew louder, almost deafening. They swirled around us, echoing through the supply closet, drowning out the world outside. I took a step back, heart racing. "Clara, what is going on?" I asked, panic creeping in. This wasn't just about me anymore, I could feel it. Whatever darkness was lurking in that hospital was alive and watching. Then, everything went dark. The lights flickered out, and for a moment, I couldn't tell up from down. I reached for the wall to steady myself. When the lights blinked back on, Clara was gone. The emptiness around me felt heavy. I stood alone in the silent closet, hands shaking. I needed answers now more than ever. Whatever truth was hidden in the shadows of that hospital had to be uncovered. I swallowed hard, and steadied my resolve. I would find Clara, and we would get to the bottom of this, but deep down, I knew one thing: I was about to step into something far more dangerous than I ever imagined. I burst out of the supply closet, my heart pounding. The whispers still swirled in my ears, but now they felt distant, like echoes trapped behind the walls. "Clara!" I called, desperate to hear her response. The emptiness of the hallway answered with silence. I glanced around, trying to decide where to go. The hospital was different at this hour. Shadows loomed larger while the lights flickered with an unsettling rhythm. I had a choice to make: I could search the break room or head to the nurses' station. Either way, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the cold prickle creeping back along my spine. I opted for the nurses' station. It made sense: Clara spent most of her time there, and maybe she'd returned. The closer I got, the stronger the whispers became. They wrapped around me, urging me forward, tangled with words that I could almost decipher. "Not safe." I pushed a door open, flooding the small room with light. I was met with emptiness, the monitors silent. Clara wasn't there, but something caught my eye. A file had been left open on the desk. I stepped closer, the fluorescent light glaring down at the faded papers. The file was marked confidential. My breath hitched, but I couldn't look away. Inside, I found notes detailing patient treatments and strange occurrences, unexplained medical symptoms, bizarre behaviors, and mentions of missing records. My heart raced as I read about a group of patients who had vanished under mysterious circumstances. Then, something shifted in my peripheral vision. I turned quickly to the window. It was then that I saw her, Clara, standing at the far end of the hall. She looked pale, her face drawn and tense. I opened my mouth to call out, but she turned and hurried down the corridor. "Clara! Wait!" I shouted, but she didn't stop. Panic surged through me, pushing me to follow her. I sprinted down the hall, glancing around, expecting the whispers to grow louder, but they fell silent, as if holding their breath. When I reached the end of the corridor, she had disappeared. I stood there, breathless, scanning the darkened hallway for any sign of her. The echo of my footsteps amplified the emptiness. "Why did you run?" I whispered to myself, frustration gnawing at my insides. That's when I noticed something glinting on the floor by the wall: Clara's ID badge. It lay there like a breadcrumb leading into the unknown. I bent to pick it up, my heart racing at the prospect of finding her. But as I did, I felt a cold hand clasped around my wrist. I spun around, ready to confront whatever waited behind me, but no one was there. My mind raced with possibilities: the whispers, Clara's fear, the file. Everything was crashing together, driving me toward a truth I felt I might never grasp. I clutched the badge tightly and turned back down the corridor. Whatever lay ahead, I wouldn't turn back. I had to find Clara. I had to uncover what was happening in this hospital before it swallowed me whole. As I moved deeper into the shadows, I sensed something shift in the air. The whispers returned, this time more urgent, and I could swear I heard my name among them. "Liam!" With that, I pushed forward, steeling myself for whatever twisted reality awaited me. I pressed on, gripping Clara's badge like a lifeline. The whispers intensified, swirling around me, carrying fragments of words I wished I could understand. Each step felt heavier, the air thickening with anticipation. I turned the corner, hoping to find Clara, but was met with a long stretch of empty hallway, flickering overhead lights casting eerie shadows. "Where are you?" My voice echoed back at me, mocking my desperation. I caught sight of another door labeled staff only. With no other choice, I pushed it open. The room beyond was cramped and dark, a storage space filled with old equipment and forgotten supplies. I squinted, trying to adjust to the dimness. A flicker of red caught my eye at the far end, a light glimmering beneath a door that was just slightly ajar. I crept closer, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. "Liam, come." The voice was soft, pleading. It sounded like Clara, but something felt off. Without thinking, I reached for the door, nudging it open. The small room was bathed in a strange, red hue. A single lamp flickered weakly on a desk cluttered with patient files and syringes. My stomach twisted at the sight. This was not a place for patients. It felt wrong, but then, my eyes fell on something shocking. Clara's notebook sprawled open on the desk. It was filled with hasty notes and sketches of patients, each marked with haunting symbols. I stepped forward, feeling drawn to it despite the chill creeping over my skin. "Liam," the voice came again, closer this time. My heart raced as I turned to face the sound. I saw her, just as pale as before, lingering at the edge of the doorway. "Clara! What's going on?" I took a tentative step towards her, but her expression was full of fear. "You shouldn't be here," she gasped. "They're looking for you." Before I could respond, the overhead lights flickered violently and went out, plunging the room into darkness. My heart raced as I fumbled for the wall, desperate to find something to hold on to. The whispers erupted into a cacophony around me, drowning out my thoughts with panic. "Liam," I could hear Clara's voice, but it was muffled, distant. I stumbled back towards the door, but something cold brushed my arm, holding me in place. I struggled to break free, pushing against whatever unseen force held me captive. "Help me!" I shouted, but my voice faded into the chaos. Then, as abruptly as it started, the whispers ceased. I felt the grip loosen, and I turned to see Clara again. But she was no longer in the doorway. Instead, a figure stood behind her, its face obscured by shadows, a twisted silhouette watching me with intent. "Run!" Clara yelled, her voice filled with urgency as her image flickered like a dying flame. Just as I turned to flee, the lights flickered back to life, revealing the full horror of the room. The figure was gone, but the air thickened with a sense of imminent danger. I couldn't stay here. I needed to find Clara and escape this nightmare. I raced out of the storage room, leaving the chaos behind, determined to uncover the truth before it swallowed me, too. I dashed down the hallway, the cold tiles slick beneath my feet. I could still feel Clara's panic-driven presence weighing on me, as if the very walls were closing in. My thoughts raced. What did she mean? "They're looking for you"? Did she mean the doctors? Or something worse? I needed answers. Each door I passed felt like a potential salvation or disaster. I saw a window at the end of the corridor and instinctively headed toward it, hoping for some fresh air and a chance to regroup. Just as I reached for the latch, a loud bang echoed from behind me. I whipped around, heart pounding. The storage room door I had just left was now thrown open, and someone stepped into the light. It wasn't Clara. The figure was taller, wearing a white coat stained with dark patches that looked like blood. Panic surged through me. I backed away, hand gripping the window frame. "Where do you think you're going?" the figure called, its voice smooth but sinister. I didn't wait to find out more. I turned and sprinted towards the nearest staircase, my breath coming in ragged gasps. As I raced down the steps, the whispers returned, this time louder, more insistent. "Help us," they pleaded, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't risk slowing myself down if there really was danger behind me. I reached the ground floor and bolted through the doorway into a seemingly deserted lobby. A flickering front desk lamp cast shadows over cluttered chairs and abandoned magazines. I hesitated. Where was everyone? Liam. A whisper caught my attention, familiar yet distant. I spun around to see Clara's pale face peeking through the doorway I had just come through. In here. Quickly. I hesitated, my instincts screaming that I should run the other way. Clara, is it safe? There's no time. She insisted, her voice strained. You have to trust me. Against my better judgment, I moved toward her, the fear in her eyes cutting through my uncertainty. Just then, heavy footsteps thudded from behind. My heart raced, and I didn't have time to think. I dashed into the room. She gestured to a closet filled with janitorial supplies. I squeezed inside, pressing against the cold metal of a shelf. Close the door. Clara hissed, scrambling in after me. She shut the door just as the footsteps stopped outside. My ears strained to catch every sound, the rush of my pulse deafening. We waited in silence, breathless. The whispers grew louder again, swirling around us, now mixed with angry shouts. Something was happening in the hallway, something I couldn't see. Then the door rattled violently, shaking on its hinges. I held my breath, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Clara's hand gripped my arm tightly, her eyes wide with fear. They know we're here, she whispered. Just as I prepared myself to fight or flee, a loud crash echoed through the lobby, followed by an eerie silence. The rattling at the door stopped abruptly, and I strained to hear what came next. That's when I saw it, Clara murmured, her voice barely audible. What? I asked, but before she could answer, the door burst open, and I was yanked out of the closet into a new, terrifying reality. I stumbled into the hallway, disoriented. The sudden plunge from the closet to this chaotic, fluorescent-lit corridor left me gasping. A figure loomed in front of me, a technician in scrubs, eyes wide and frenzied. What are you doing here? He shouted, his breath heavy. I scrambled back, glancing at Clara, whose face had drained of what little color it had left. Stay back! I shouted, an edge of desperation in my voice. I was on high alert, not knowing if this was another threat or help. Get out! You don't belong here! He yelled, looking back toward the lobby, where shadowy shapes moved in and out of the flickering light. The whispers intensified, swirling violently, drowning out everything else. Wait! Clara pleaded, stepping forward. We just need to find a way out. They're coming. I couldn't tell who she meant by they. My mind raced, trying to piece everything together. It was all happening too fast. Were there more of them? The technician shook his head, clearly at his wit's end. You don't know what you're dealing with. You have to hide. He gestured wildly toward an exit sign that flickered ineffectively in the gloom. The angry murmurs shifted tone, raising the tension in the air, as if signaling something ominous. I didn't want to be in that hallway any longer. Where should we go? I asked, feeling the weight of impending chaos bearing down on us. Follow me, he said, darting through a door labeled staff only. Without thinking, I took Clara's hand, and we sprinted after him. As soon as we entered, the door swung shut behind us with a loud bang. The room was dimly lit, filled with medical equipment and surgical tools. My heart pounded not just from the run, but from a growing sense of dread. Something felt terribly wrong. Listen, the technician said, his voice lowering. I can help you, but you have to trust me. What's going on? I demanded. Why are we being hunted? He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. The whispers were growing louder outside, mixing with heavy footsteps and frantic voices. They're not what they seem. You've caught their attention. If you want to get out of here, you need to know the truth. What truth? Clara asked, her voice trembling. There's a darker side to this hospital. It was never just about healing. He paused, eyes darting toward the door. You've seen the blood, haven't you? It's a cover-up. They've been experimenting. Before he could finish, a harsh crash reverberated outside. The doorknob rattled violently. The technician's expression twisted to panic. We don't have time. I felt Clara squeeze my hand, fear radiating from her. The whispers crescendoed, almost demanding a sacrifice. I braced myself against the wall, trying to process everything. Then, through the doorway, I saw them, figures draped in lab coats, faces obscured, emerging from the shadows. "Run!" I shouted, but in that moment, everything went black. Then I could see nothing but chaos, and the echoing whispers shrieked like 1,000 voices in my ears, demanding I face a terrifying truth I wasn't ready for. I woke up on the cold floor of the room, disoriented and gasping for air. My head throbbed, and the harsh fluorescent lights flickered above me, casting unsettling shadows. Clara was beside me, her eyes wide, panic etched on her face. "Are you okay?" she whispered, shaking my shoulder. "We have to get out of here." I blinked hard, trying to shake off the dizziness. "What happened?" I croaked, trying to remember the last moments before everything went dark. "The technician was gone, leaving no trace behind. He just vanished," she said, her voice trembling. "They were right there. We need to move." I pushed myself up, feeling the coldness of the floor seep into my bones. The whispers were still swirling around, a cacophony that felt alive, gripping my thoughts and pulling me deeper into dread. "Which way?" I asked, glancing nervously toward the door. "The only door," Clara said, pointing to the one the technician had fled through. "It's our best shot." I nodded, and we rushed to the door. The handle turned easily, and we stepped into a larger hallway. Rows of flickering lights buzzed above us, and every sound echoed eerily off the tile walls. The air felt heavy, thick with unknown dread. "Where are we?" I found myself asking as we crept down the corridor, trying to remain quiet. My heart raced, every brush of air against my skin made me flinch. "I don't know," Clara replied. "Some sort of service area, I think." The end of the hall revealed another door, but it was slightly ajar. I hesitated, hearing muffled voices on the other side. "What if it's them?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. "Let us just listen," Clara suggested, her eyes darting back and forth, assessing our options. We pressed ourselves against the wall beside the door, straining to hear. "Need to relocate the subjects," one voice said, low and steady. "The experiment is causing too many anomalies." "Not just yet," another voice countered, sounding irritated. "We need the data. They've seen too much already." The words sliced through the air like blades. "Subjects? Experiments?" My stomach dropped as realization hit. We had stumbled into something truly dark. "We shouldn't be here," I murmured. Ignoring my nerves, Clara pushed the door wider, peering inside. What was once dimly lit now felt overwhelmingly bright. Inside, there were rows of desks piled with papers, glowing screens, and strange equipment I couldn't identify. But the worst was what lay on the far side of the room. Shadows filled both corners, creeping slowly away from the light, revealing more lab-coated figures, their heads bent together in hushed tones. "Definitely not just doctors." "That's when I saw it," Clara gasped. "Someone, with a syringe." My breath caught in my throat as I watched one of the figures turn, the glint of metal catching the light. The door creaked under our pressure, and I felt panic rising. "Run!" I yelled, but the moment I turned, the whispering grew furious around us. "What's happening?" Clara cried, a bead of sweat rolling down the side of her face. Suddenly, the lights began to flicker more violently, and the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, drowning out everything. There was no time left. We had to escape, or the darkness might swallow us whole. I felt something cold brush against my neck and spun around. But there was nothing there. Just the looming shadows, thick and menacing, ready to close in. In that moment, I realized any hope of understanding this place was slipping away like sand through my fingers. We bolted down the corridor, adrenaline pulsing through our veins. I barely had time to look back at the door, I just knew we needed to get as far away from that room as possible. Behind us, the voices faded but the whispers remained, swirling around me like a storm of discontent. "What now?" Clara gasped, her breath hitching. We turned a corner, and the hallway opened into a larger space that looked like a waiting area, but it was devoid of any furniture. Just sterile white walls and fluorescent lights that hummed menacingly. I don't know, I admitted, panic creeping back in. Maybe there's another exit? Just then, we heard hurried footsteps approaching from one end of the corridor. My heart raced again. They're coming. We can't be caught. Clara's eyes were wide, darting around for an escape route. This way. She grabbed my arm and dragged me through a passage that led further into the shadows. We moved quietly but quickly, each footfall feeling like a betrayal in the silence. My mind raced. What experiment? What had they seen? And what did they want from us? The questions spun faster than I could grasp them. As we continued deeper into the building, I found myself increasingly aware of the pervasive dread. The walls felt closer, the air heavier. I could almost taste the fear thickening the atmosphere, and the whispers intensified, wrapping around us like a tightening noose. Then Clara stopped abruptly, pulling me to a halt. Her expression shifted from panic to confusion. Did you hear that? She whispered. I strained to listen. It was faint, almost like a heartbeat echoing through the walls. What is that? I asked, my voice barely above a murmur. It sounds like it's coming from over there. Clara pointed to a door at the far end of the corridor. The handle was old and tarnished, like it hadn't been used in ages. Fear trickled down my spine. What if it's another lab? I questioned, my throat suddenly dry. Clara seemed to weigh her options. We can't hide forever. We need to know if there's a way out. Against my instincts, I nodded, driven by the urgency of the moment. We crept toward the door, the heartbeat growing louder as we approached. Clara glanced around nervously before gripping the handle and turning it slowly. The door creaked open, and we stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, and a strange setup of equipment filled the space. The rhythmic sound intensified, now accompanied by a low hum that vibrated through the room. It wasn't just a heartbeat, it felt alive. My eyes widened as I noticed monitors flashing sporadically. Data streamed across the screens, but I couldn't make sense of any of it. One monitor displayed images that made my stomach churn, a series of blurry, distorted faces, eyes wide and fearful. That's us. Clara gasped, pointing at the screen. It's from the lab. A deep fear settled in my chest. They were monitoring us. Then I noticed something else. On another screen, a countdown timer ticked down ominously, but I couldn't tell what it was counting down to. Every number felt like a countdown to our doom. Clara, I said, my voice trembling, we need to get out of here. Now. But before we could react, the door slammed shut behind us, and the whispers surged, echoing around the room like a storm breaking. I turned as the lights flickered dangerously, the countdown ticking faster. 3, 2, 1. I braced for the worst. The moment the countdown hit 0, a blinding flash enveloped the room. I squeezed my eyes shut, the brightness tearing through my eyelids like the sun piercing through darkness. When I opened them again, everything felt different, hazy, distorted. Clara? I called out, panic rising in my throat. But my voice echoed back, hollow and empty. The room was darker now, the monitors flickering erratically as if they were struggling to stay alive. The heartbeat thudded louder, almost deafening. It was as if the machinery resonated with my racing pulse. Here. Clara's voice broke through the chaos. She was crouched in a corner, hands clapped over her ears, trying to block out the noise. I rushed to her side, but as I reached, she pointed, her expression shifting from fear to horror. That. She gasped, her finger trembling. Following her gaze, I spotted a figure standing in the shadows at the far end of the room. The shape was indistinct, just a dark silhouette against the dull glow of the screens. My breath caught in my throat. Who are you? I shouted, my voice edged with defiance. The figure didn't move, but I felt the air thicken around it, like the space between us was charged with electricity. Then something shifted. The lights flickered again, and for a split second, the figure stepped into the light. My heart dropped. It was one of the scientists from the lab, but he looked different. His eyes were wide, almost blank, and his mouth opened, but the words that came out were drowned out by the machine's cacophony. "Run!" Clara shouted suddenly, breaking the spell that held me in place. She tugged at my arm, pulling me back toward the door. I didn't fight her. We rushed to the exit. I yanked the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me as I twisted and pulled with all my strength. "It's locked. We're trapped. Look!" Clara shouted, pointing at a panel on the wall just beside the door. "What's that?" There was a small keypad next to the panel, but it was flickering as it buzzed and hummed erratically. I could barely make out numbers and letters on it. "I don't know the code." "Just try something," she urged, her eyes darting back to the figure, who seemed to be moving closer now. In that moment, desperation took over. I pressed a random sequence of numbers and letters, praying something would happen. The buzz turned to a hum, then a low beep. My heart raced as I felt the floor shift beneath me. The door slid open suddenly, and we bolted through, tumbling out into another corridor. Breathing heavily, I turned around to see the scientist behind us, his face twisted in an expression I couldn't identify. Fear? Anger? It lit a fire under my feet. We ran again, the whispers growing louder, the air crackling with energy. But just as hope surged in my chest, the lights flickered one last time, and I noticed something written in blood-red letters on the wall across from me. "Time is running out." That's when everything went dark. I stumbled back into the darkness, my senses reeling. I couldn't tell if my heart was racing from panic or the oppressive silence that engulfed us. It felt like we'd wandered into an endless void, and the weight of uncertainty bore down on me harder than before. "Liam!" Clara's voice broke through the haze. I reached out, our fingers finding each other in the darkness. "We need to keep moving," she urged, and I felt her hand tremble in mine. "Where do we go?" I asked, my voice barely rising above a whisper. Before she could respond, a low hum began to fill the air, vibrating through my chest like the heartbeat we'd heard earlier. But this time, it felt different. It pulsed with urgency, beckoning us toward something deep within the dark. "Follow the sound," Clara said, more to herself than to me. We took tentative steps, moving slowly at first, and then faster as the hum intensified. After what felt like an eternity, a sliver of light pierced through the darkness ahead, and we sprinted toward it, driven by the faint hope that it might be our escape. Bursting through the threshold, we found ourselves in a small control room filled with more monitors and equipment. The lights flickered on one by one, illuminating the starkness of the space. I could see rows of screens displaying an array of images, most of them looping footage of the hospital corridors, our images flashing on them. Heart pounding, I felt both surreal and intrusive, like watching ourselves from afar. "Why are they recording us?" Clara exclaimed, her eyes fixed on the screens. I rifled through a pile of papers on a nearby desk, my fingers trembling as I tried to piece together what was happening. "Look at this," I said, holding up a document marked Experiment File 203. It detailed procedures on monitoring patient behavior after exposure to supposed whispers. The notes were frantic, littered with observations about subjects hearing voices and experiencing inexplicable phenomena. "They're testing on us," I continued, the dread settling into the pit of my stomach. "Liam," Clara whispered. I turned just as she pointed at one of the screens, where the figure of the technician from earlier flickered momentarily, his eyes hard and cold. Panic surged again. What do we do? The hum grew louder, vibrating the room. "Maybe these computers can tell us more," I suggested. I stumbled to the main terminal and sat down, fingers brushing over the keyboard. "I need to access the network." As I tapped in commands, the screen filled with information and images, evidence meticulously documenting the experiments. I felt a cold sweat breaking out on my brow. "This is worse than we thought," I muttered. There were references to patients disappearing after vocalizing the whispers, and a serialization of names that included those of our now missing colleagues. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and the hum transformed into a dissonant cacophony of whispers. "Liam! Clara!" The voices swirled around me like a descending fog, drowning out my thoughts. Paralyzed by fear, I scanned the screens as they displayed feverish chaos. Make it stop! Clara shouted, clutching her head. I can't control it. I cried back, but just then, one screen showed a timer counting down rapidly. 1 o'clock, 0:59, 0:58. Panic surged. What does that mean? Get us out of here, Clara urged. I frantically typed a series of commands, praying for some kind of override. Just then, the door behind us slammed shut, locking us in. No! I yelled, frantically tapping keys as the timer continued to tick down. 10 seconds. Clara shouted, her voice laced with desperation. I slammed my fist on the keyboard in frustration. Come on! As the countdown reached 6 seconds, a jarring surge swept through the room, causing the screens to flash with rapid images of patients, an array of faces, some familiar, some I didn't recognize, each contorted with fear and suffering. It was chaotic, racing through my mind like a tangled web of memories. 3 seconds. Clara screamed, and I shut my eyes, bracing for the worst. The timer hit 0, and the room burst into an explosion of light. I was thrown back against the wall as everything blurred into a kaleidoscope of color and sound. And then darkness. I felt nothing. Time ceased to exist. When I finally opened my eyes, I was standing outside the hospital, Clara beside me. The sun had risen, casting long shadows across the front steps. I blinked against the light, trying to catch my breath. Is it over? Clara asked breathlessly, looking around as if expecting something to emerge from the building. I think so, but I struggled to catch my thoughts. We have to report what happened inside. But the whispers had faded, an eerie silence now wrapping around us as if the hospital itself breathed a sigh of relief. Do you think anyone will believe us? Clara questioned, looking back at the building that loomed above us. I don't know, I admitted, the uncertainty gnawing at me. There are still so many questions. We took one last look, and I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow, the hospital retained its secrets, that the whispers still echoed somewhere inside. Despite our escape, a part of me felt tethered to the darkness we had just fled. I moved across town a few weeks later, Clara said quietly as we began to walk away. But sometimes I still think about it. I wonder if those figures are still there, waiting. I try not to, I replied, but I could feel the whispers rising in the back of my mind, mingling with memories I couldn't fully grasp. As we left, I couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps the whispers were merely quieted, that a shadow still loomed over the hospital, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to unravel its mysteries, and I wondered if I would ever truly be free from them.